Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to tonight's Reading School Committee Candidate Forum. My name's Marianne Downing, and I'll be the moderator and questioner this evening. I've been a Reading resident for 25 years. I've been on FinCom for 10 years and town meeting for 10 years and FinCom for 6 years. And I think the candidates all know me outside of this meeting, so I'm hoping this is going to be a very friendly and informational conversation. Tonight's questions are going to focus on some aspects of powers and responsibilities of the school committee, budget issues, general topics of education, and some issues that have arisen in the community in the recent past and which we might be facing in the future. First, some quick housekeeping. All of the candidates have been informed about these rules. Each candidate has 2 minutes to respond to each question, and we will rotate through who goes first. Each candidate will also have 2 minutes for an opening statement, 2 minutes for a closing statement, and they will each have 2 rebuttals of 1 minute each. Marcel Dubois, who's off camera, will be helping to time and will be giving 30-second warnings and all done warnings to the candidates. Our candidate opening statements will start and be the same as their order on the ballot, and then in closing they will be the reverse. So we will begin with our opening statements, and we'll start with candidate Erin Gaffen.
Good evening. Thank you to the organizers and volunteers for joining us tonight. My name is Erin Gaffen, and I'm seeking your vote for re-election to the school committee. For 20 years, my family and I have called Reading home, and serving this community for the last 6 years has been one of my greatest privileges. My approach is shaped by a unique 360-degree view of our schools. I'm a former special educator and administrator, a town meeting member, and a local realtor who understands that the health of our schools is the heartbeat of our town. Most importantly, I am a parent of 3 children currently navigating different stages of their educational journeys. These roles keep me grounded in the day-to-day realities of our families. Over the past several years, I'm proud of what we have achieved together. We've transitioned to universal full-day kindergarten, strengthened our academic pathways in both math and literacy, and secured the critical support needed for the new Killam Elementary School. But beyond the what, I'm equally proud of the how. On the school committee, we bring different perspectives, but we move forward with mutual respect. We listen, we challenge the administration when necessary, and we always start from the same goal: doing what is best for the students. There is still vital work ahead, from navigating our budget challenges to ensuring every student feels supported and seen. I'm committed to meeting those challenges with the same preparation, transparency, and collaborative spirit I've brought to the table for the past 6 years. Again, I'm Erin Gaffen, and I ask for your vote to keep our schools and our students moving forward.
Okay, next we'll hear from Geoff Coram.
Thank you to the Reading Recap and Chris Haley for hosting this forum, to Marianne for moderating, and for Marcel, our timekeeper. My name is Geoff Coram, and I would like your vote for school committee. My wife and I moved to Reading 25 years ago, and we chose this town primarily for its schools. I have had the privilege of volunteering in the schools for 20 years, in classrooms, in the lunchroom, on field trips, and at extracurricular activities. I was also the treasurer of the parent-teacher organizations at Birch Meadow, then Coolidge, then RMHS, serving for a total of 12 years, and filing all the paperwork to obtain 501c3 tax-exempt status for 2 of those 3 PTOs. I continue to help build sets for the RMHS Drama Club, something I have done for over 10 years now. A shout out to the club for making it to the finals of the METG Theatre Fest this year, and good luck to them tomorrow. I've been on the Finance Committee since 2021, and along with Marianne, serve as liaison to the school committee, and I briefly served on the school committee as an interim member in 2019. Although my children have graduated, the Reading Public Schools did an excellent job of educating them, and I am still passionate about education and deeply invested in the success of our schools. I believe my experience at all levels of the schools would be helpful to the new superintendent, and I thank the current school committee members for all their recent work to try to get that person into place before the election. My experience on the Finance Committee would be helpful as the town faces the prospect of an override in the near future. Thank you for this opportunity to earn your vote.
Okay, and next we'll hear from Laurie Hayes.
Hi, I'm Lori Hayes, and I'm running for school committee. One of the reasons why I think I would be a good candidate is because I'm a doer. I see things and I do things. For instance, I saw that about 40% of students have difficulty learning how to read, so I joined the Reading and Reading Literacy Committee and helped bring the Art Core curriculum to K through 3, and that curriculum is now all the way through middle school. So another area is classroom needs for a refresh of their libraries. Working with the middle school ELA teachers and the RMHS librarian, I was able to bring 400 curated books, used books, to the classrooms and the library to support their reading. Another area was in math instruction for my son. It was clear that there were some differences between the exact same class and the outcomes for the students. So I worked with the department, the math department, and the teachers, and was able to bring them evidence that helped them understand how perhaps they could rectify that. And I'm not the only one, there were others. But that's led to guaranteed learning experiences, and that brings common assessments to the students so they have more similar experiences regardless of the teacher. So that's fairly new. I've also been clearly seen that there are needs for prop masters and spooky fun fair volunteers and leaders of the silent auction for the class of 2026, for instance, chaperones and mystery readers. And for those, I've stepped up too. But more recently, it's the fact that our superintendent is leaving that makes me run for school committee to make sure we can preserve our community. Thank you.
All right, thank you, candidates. So I'm going to start the questioning off with Erin. And this question is probably something that's very familiar to Erin as a school committee member, because it seems to be a repeated issue that gets raised by Reading parents on social media, sometimes I would imagine at school committee meetings, and especially at the elementary level, and this is class sizes. In recent years, I've noticed inequities in class sizes between schools, where sometimes when there's bubble groups going through, certain schools will have much larger class sizes in a grade. Yet at the same time, district-wide, enrollment has been declining or flattening, and it's particularly through the last 3 budget cycles. But class sizes still remain uneven. So the question for you, and it'll be for the other candidates, is how, or do you think, should Reading adjust staffing or school configuration to maintain reasonable class sizes without over allocating resources? And do you think Reading needs formal policies on class sizes?
So great question. And this is one that I have personally been impacted by over the years with my kids. So I do understand that it can be a source of frustration. While we don't have a policy on class sizes, we have an expectation, we have guidance that our K through 2 classes do not exceed 22 students, and that our 3 through 5 classes do not exceed 25 students. And I do believe the district has done a very good job in sticking to that, particularly the last several years. I think there were some mistakes made longer ago. I can recall when my now 17-year-old was in an extremely large kindergarten class. But again, I think we've learned from that and tried to adjust. It's a very tricky business because we try to be a town of neighborhood schools, and that's something that's very important to families. If all of your daughter or son's neighborhood friends go to a certain school, then ideally you want your child to be able to attend that school. Kindergarten enrollment can only be predicted so far. We see year after year that there are discrepancies. So someone might have moved and we had them in the census, or someone might choose to send their child to private kindergarten or out of district. But so I think the administration does the very best they can to try and honor the neighborhood schools and balance class sizes, but it's not perfect. But it is a conversation every year, something we're always looking at and weighing and trying to balance.
Okay, thank you. Geoff, what are your thoughts?
I agree with Erin that the school committee and the administration has done a better job in recent years than in the past. It's something that's sort of dropped down below the loudest complaints that were heard earlier. And I also feel that the school choice that the district has engaged in recently, that brings in students, not just Metco, but also people from neighboring towns can choose to pay our school department extra money to send their kids. And those, obviously, the superintendent has the freedom to assign them to whichever school has those extra seats. So I don't think we've ever really pushed over the guidelines that Erin mentioned. But when you see a class size that's substantially less at a different school, say, hey, but then the school district has identified those as places you can put those extra students so that you don't have wildly disparate class sizes in the different grades. I also feel like the recent policies have given the superintendent more flexibility. I remember early days, there used to be sort of rigid lines. This is this district and this is this district, whereas now the superintendent has a little more flexibility in the policy that says, oh yeah, I'm going to move a couple of kids from here that maybe their neighbor would have gone to Joshua Eaton, but now these kids are going to go to Barrows because there's a little more space at Barrows. So I think we've seen that flexibility, and I think we've done a pretty good job of evening things up.
Okay, thank you. And how about you, Laurie?
There's only so much you can say, I think, about redistricting and the class sizes, and each of you have pointed to things that are very important. One, especially since we're in a position where we're staring down the barrel of a Proposition 2.5 override, is how do we use that situation perhaps to help us in that regard? So gives us the flexibility perhaps in some areas where there are smaller class sizes or some wiggle room to introduce additional students in school choice. So
Okay,
yes.
thank you. All right, so the next question is going to be for Geoff. The district has added a lot of new positions in recent years: interventionists, counselors, assistant principals, and different support staff. I think at one point they told us on FinCom about 34 positions, and it's slowed down. But we are, as Laurie just said, facing down an override, which may or may not pass. So how do you think the school committee should help the superintendent decide which positions are essential and which may need to be reevaluated if an override does not pass or if revenues tighten? What criteria do you think should be used to evaluate positions?
Oh, it's always hard to advocate for cutting things like that. But certainly, the classroom teachers are the #1 priority. And then I would hope that some of the extra people that have been added, if they were added in particular to support the ARC core curriculum, that a lot of those teaching, what do they call them, that are there to sort of the coaches that help the teachers learn the new curriculum wouldn't be as necessary as the teachers get more familiar with it. Certainly, it's a difficult proposition, though, as we see more multilingual learners, that we can't take away these supports for the students that need them. So I would just hope that enough of the coaches and the support positions that have helped bring our teachers up to the level where they are, that we would be able to find some of those that were not as necessary if we really get into tight budget
Right,
pitches.
Thank you. And Laurie?
So that's a good question. I guess the first thing you would look to is any unfilled positions, and I know there's one that the superintendent desperately wants to make sure is included. That's the director of RISE. He wants that to happen. So attrition, positions that have not been filled yet, you can't really, don't have as much wiggle room with contractual obligated positions. So legal mandates, but obviously priorities also is going to be, a high, like an untouchable group that we shouldn't be able to remove from our staff. So there are a lot of different areas that are not core, for instance, and those may be the areas where you start looking non-core, non-essential staff.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Laura, you're going to go first on this next
I
question.
didn't answer.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Erin.
It's okay.
Go ahead. I lost track. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I feel pretty strongly about this because I've been on the school committee for the past 6 years. So under the current administration, all of these positions were added or shortly before Dr. Milczewski started. So I only have 2 minutes, so I'm not going to belabor why I think all of these positions are vital to the health and the functioning of our district. But I will say that there is a reason our schools are doing very well right now, and it's because we have invested in the core of our schools. So teachers are vital, but teachers need support. So that's where coaches come in. That's where counselors come in. Students need the social emotional support just as much as they need the academic support. Certainly we have students on IEPs and 504 plans who require accommodations and services. And the more of that we can do well and do in district is saving the district money from having to send students outside the district to get those services. Freeing up the principals, I almost want to say freeing up in quotes, because our principals work incredibly intense jobs, but providing the assistant principals allowed the principals to truly focus on their roles as administrators. I did what I said I wasn't going to do. I justified all the adding of the positions. I wouldn't be looking to cut positions. I would be looking at the distribution of students and the distribution of staff and whether we need to shift some staff to balance numbers better, whether there are class sizes where we can combine. But my last resort would be cutting positions as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. And again, sorry, I was
It's okay.
trying to go through getting ahead of myself. So Laurie, I guess this is maybe another money related question, but it doesn't involve people directly. So the district has a device replacement cycle that what I notice seems to be very expensive. It has to be recurring. And another issue that strikes me is there's increased talk about device use, particularly in the lower grades, and whether there's an over-reliance. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about how Reading could balance concerns with whether we need all these devices in our elementary schools with screen time at that age. But there is all the reality that MCAS testing in grade 3 requires use of a computer. So do you have thoughts about that balance, which might also save us money on devices?
Yes, that would be great, wouldn't it? I think it is a delicate balance, and the amount of time that students are using screens within the classrooms. I think it does take away from their ability to interact more, maybe whether it be with the instructors or other students. And that does, I know you talk about elementary school, but it bleeds into the later grades too, where they're doing more modern classroom type curriculum. So some students are self leading, self directed in their studies, and it's all on a computer. So if that's the direction that we're going, yes, it does cost money to do that. It also is time for the teachers to make sure that that is set up. But I think there is a cost literally to the children's well-being to spend so much time also on screens, even in school. Not to mention the fact that they need more time to be moving rather than sitting in front of a screen. Um, and they probably get a fair amount of that at home also. So potentially it could be a cost savings not having as much or as much reliance on that in the elementary school as well.
Okay. Erin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think delicate balance is a good expression. But the reality is we live in an increasingly digital society, and we are raising our kids to grow up in this increasingly more digital reliant world. So I think I think I defer to the curriculum experts and the teachers about, striking that balance. Our classrooms are still full of physical books and workbooks. We're still teaching handwriting and spelling in the earlier grades. So I think you still have to have those core foundations, but the reality is more and more curriculum are coming with these incredible digital tools. Assessments are often done digitally, and I think that allows us to access the data in a more efficient way. MCAS is a good example. I remember with one of my kids, they didn't start learning typing until a certain point into third grade. And that whole time I knew they were going to have the MCAS that spring, and it was going to be digital, and they were going to have to type. And so I think that the more we can help kids get comfortable with using these tools in a safe and responsible setting versus left to their own devices at home. I'm still, I think social media and cell phones are a different beast that I sort of hold separate from that, and video games. But as far as educationally, I think it's the direction that schools are going in.
Okay, what about you, Geoff?
Yeah, I agree with what Erin's saying, that in particular that the cell phones are a different animal. When my kids were in school, there was a lot of bring your own device. So the kids would bring out their own iPads, their own phones to do some of the in-class quizzes or something in middle school. And then, hey, they had their phone, maybe they just send off a quick text to their friend. So having the school-controlled devices in there is really allowing the school to better control what applications the children are working on. And as Erin said, it's a digital world. They need to become familiar with these computers in order to be able to take those tests, in order to access the curriculum material that are only available now as going on online. I mean, even in college, you don't get the textbooks anymore. You rent an electronic version. So the more comfortable they are with that, the better we're going to be setting these students up for success in their future.
Okay, thank you. Let's stay on the tech topic for a minute. Last year, I know I asked about AI, and I think usage has exploded this year. So I'm wondering whether you think this is the time when Reading should establish an AI policy, whether it be for staff or students. I mean, districts like Burlington and Wellesley have already established AI policies, and I guess DESE has a policy, though I have not read it. So I'm curious if you think Reading should adopt an AI policy, and what kind of principles should guide that policy. And we'll start with Erin.
The short answer is yes. I think we're at a point where we need a policy. I'd be more concerned with students, but I guess it's not a terrible idea to look at how staff are using it. But I do think it can be a very helpful tool, particularly for staff. As far as the policy, I think one of the most important things is teaching our students digital literacy and making sure that they really understand how to use these tools appropriately and what crosses a line to allowing the tool to do your work for you. And there is a difference. So again, I think we are raising them in this world where these tools are all out there. It's not, it's way beyond chat GPT at this point. It's there's so many sites out there. But I think rather than ignoring that exists, it's much more important to teach them responsible usage, because it is incredibly critical that they are still original thinkers, that they can think for themselves, that they can develop their own ideas and turn that into writing and messaging and communication. So that's the piece I worry about students losing, and that I would want to attempt to rein in, I guess. But I do think you have to partner it with education about the tools and how to use them properly.
Okay, next with Geoff. What are your thoughts about an AI policy?
So absolutely, and in fact, correct me if I'm wrong, Erin, but I think there was a policy, at least a little bit of policy added to sort of the academic sort of plagiarism part, that that using AI when it was not allowed was already worked into, just a brief mention, but certainly some expansion of that policy is warranted. And I've actually seen AI at use in two cases. The drama club used AI to sort of help them work out the play that they presented at the METG festival last year, and the robotics team has used AI to help program their robot. They fed it something, said, hey, can you help me fix it? And there was actually one case where the student found that AI came back with some stuff that made a huge number of changes, like, I'm not sure about this, I'm going to set this aside and take a look at it. So it's not just when to use AI and when not to, but also we need to educate our kids on where AI's pitfalls are. What is it that this tool actually does, right? It's good at predicting what the next word is from something that it's read somewhere else, but that's not necessarily what you want it to do in the different situations. So we need to educate the students on what these tools can do for them and what's going to trip them up. But I think someone at my work mentioned that it's not that AI is going to take our job. It's that somebody who's better at AI than I am is going to take my job, right? So we need to teach these students how to use these tools, and we need to teach them the right way to use them and set those policies up.
Okay, and Laurie?
Most definitely, I believe that we should probably have a policy. There is, from what I've been told already, an AI working group within the Reading Public Schools that has been looking at this, and they perhaps could advise the school committee on some of their findings or their recommendations. I think that it could possibly turn into an advisory committee such that it's more long-standing, because AI is always changing, and we, at this day and age, probably only know the tip of what the use is of AI. And believe me, students will know before we do probably what that next thing is. So I do support that. There also is a state level nonprofit group that has been piloting an AI program in, I think, 30 different school districts. It's something we should look into, like where they are with that, what they've learned, what we might be able to adopt. And also DESE does have some guidelines that we should consider. But because it moves so quickly, it's something we should really start to tackle now. And it's expanded exponentially from, let's make sure the kids can't use it to cheat, to, teachers sometimes are using it to grade and make comments on reports and whatnot. Not to mention, chat bots and the self-harm bots that are harmful to kids. So they're multifaceted areas of AI that impact children. And the most important thing to teach them, obviously, is that it is a tool. It's a good tool, but it has to be used responsibly, and you really need humans involved.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to go in a little different direction here. So last year, a private nonprofit called the Mulberry Montessori School approached the school committee seeking to open a new K-6 school And for a number of reasons, the school committee did not give approval to that school. My understanding is it's now running an unlicensed kind of Montessori at Camp Bryce Moody. If that school or any other private entity comes before the school committee again, and you're on the school committee, how do you think the school committee should balance being welcoming to an innovative educational model, but with the need to protect our district from any kind of legal risks regarding, our obligation to provide an education to students and approve of licensed schools? Like, how do you think the district should go if Mulberry comes back or if another school comes to us like that in that kind of situation?
Is it my question?
Yes, it's you. Sorry, Jeff.
Sorry,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Right. So I guess, it would, I feel like it depends to a large extent on what level of schooling it is, right? If you come in with a kindergarten, I think that really should be left up to the parents to decide, do I feel like the curriculum as explained by this particular school, by the director, really fits what my child needs? I'd love to see more recess at in the lower grades. And, if this place is at Rice Moody and they're out in the woods all the time and really exploring nature and learning that way, I don't see that as a problem. I hadn't really given much thought to what legal risks the town would be exposed to if the curriculum. I don't think the Reading School Committee has a lot to say on their curriculum. So, to the extent that they provide a curriculum that is visible for the parents to choose that for their students, and that they have the requisite licensures for their educators, make your case to the parents and let them take their students there.
Okay. And Laurie?
So to my knowledge, so that it would be important to know like what our policy is on that, right? So at the state level, I don't believe that a private school is required to be, they don't have the same requirements as a public school. So they don't need to be accredited or certified. So that's not really the purview in this case.
Well, the school committee needed to give some kind of
No,
approval.
understood. And so for Mulberry, I think they just didn't have, for instance, they're supposed to be Montessori and they didn't really have Montessori accreditation, and to use that name, that's a little bit of a question. But for if Mulberry were to come back again, also something more recent has come up, I guess, is this school, a private school called Fusion Academy in Andover, tried to set up shop in Andover, and evidently the school committee slow walked their proposal, and they didn't evidently give them enough time to respond in the middle of meetings or whatnot. They actually are suing the school committee for $20 million. I don't know where they are in this process, but this is something that we really need to pay attention to. So, and I believe we had said that Montessori could come back. And so clearly, Reading's been very welcoming. And so we just have to have an open mind about what they're doing and assess the safety of the children. Really is, like, I think, what we would be most concerned about in that instance.
And Erin?
I think it's really case dependent on the school, the plan, the design, the staff, what ages it's for. I don't think there's a blanket response here. I was very impressed by the design and the educational plans of Mulberry. I am a huge proponent of recognizing that different kids need to learn in different ways, and I think for certain kids I could see why their design could be extremely beneficial. So that was never my concern. In that case, there was a space concern. They wanted to go into a space that our town had deemed not ready. And there was a staffing concern. They had some staff had not completed all their training, to the best of my recollection. So, I think it's always going to just depend on the situation. I would want to take in as much information as possible, and then try and make the best informed decision that I could given the circumstances.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so this is the one that's going to be a repeat of what I asked last night, but I'll start with Lori because I think it's that you may all have unique answers. So Article 14, right, of the town meeting warrant has been a hot topic in Reading in the past couple of months, discussed by multiple boards like Recreation, FinCom, and the Select Board. Can't recall if the school committee discussed it as well, but really part of this Article 14 is the school committee's purview, because they're trying to create these funds, as I know you're all familiar with Article 14. But my question is, not only what are your views on Article 14, but do you support the school budget having a permanent line item for unified sports if you were a school committee member?
That's a really good question. So clearly, I think everyone believes that we should 100% support unified sports and adaptive sports. So both of those bring so much joy to Reading. It's and not just Reading, everywhere. So that is unquestionable. The question is about the mechanics of the funding. And I know we do have the opportunity that Burbank is planning to support that as part of their funding. And the question is, I know FinCom it was recommended $25,000 be put in the school budget, which at some point the question might be, does that get moved around somewhere, right? And do we at least have an understanding that we are most likely going to be getting that money from Burbank, although I guess we have to have approval for the funding each year, which would be fine. It's a bit of a delicate question. I think a lot of people have a lot of feelings about it, and I'm grateful that it's going to town meeting. And as a town meeting member, I'm grateful that I'll be able to be on the floor and hear what people say and be able to vote on that. It's still a little bit up in the air. I'm not 100% sure where I stand on that, but I think as the discussions progress and I hear more about what people have to say and what the options are, I will have a more solid answer. Rest be assured, definitely it has to happen. And in fact, I think that the amount is probably going to have to go up because this is going to be expanding.
Okay. Erin, do you have thoughts?
Sure. This has not technically come, like Article 14 has not come before the school committee. So this is not something that we have voted on. I'm also an elected town meeting member. So I'm hoping for healthy conversation on that come April. But the short answer is that I think unified sports are hugely beneficial for the Reading Public Schools. It has been a tremendous addition for our schools, benefited hundreds of students at this point, from unified PE to the teams that Tara Hurley has been running. I'm thrilled to see it extending down to the middle school. I hope to see it continue to extend to the elementary school. The schools have to fund it. And I think that, yes, we need a permanent way to fund it so that it's not ever in question. It should not be debatable. It should just be part of our programming. The schools have been funding it. I appreciate that FinCom voted. I'm looking at you guys because you're both part of FinCom. I appreciate tremendously that FinCom voted for an additional $25,000 in the fiscal year 27 budget. But as we know, there's a lot of difficult decisions that are coming down the pipe for us. So, I think it needs to be a permanent light item. I think that adaptive sports on the town and recreation side should also be a permanent feature, but is not under the purview of the school committee. So I'm just sort of talking about the unified sports piece. And I think that if there is a mechanism in place through Burbank to ensure that that can be permanently funded, then I would be in support of that.
Thank you. And then Jeff, your thoughts?
Right. So I was on the finance committee when we voted 4-4, not well to sort of split decision on whether to recommend Article 14. And I voted against it because I didn't see that the proposed funding was actually solving the problem, right? The Burbank Arena has offered some portion of its rent, but that rent payment is not guaranteed. It doesn't necessarily really solve the problem of providing a guaranteed line item in the budget that every year would definitely be there. It also had some complicated funding questions as to, who can spend out of these stabilization funds. Do you have to get a vote at town meeting so that if you're at the beginning of the year and, they voted in April, we're going to use this much for the following year, and you come to August and somebody wants to start a new team. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't get that vote until November because that's when subsequent town meeting happens. So, I definitely support unified sports. In fact, I think it's a really great program in terms of getting people involved in a sport that they can continue to do. It's not something like, and not to say anything about high jumpers, but high jumpers is sort of not the sport that you're going to keep doing into, as you grow older, get gray hair, right? That you want to look for something like the basketball or something that you can continue to do that really increases the health of our residents, like a unified or adapted sports, where not only are the special needs students that have, but also their friends that come in. I forget they have a particular name for those other students that come along and help out. So like I said, Article 14 was not something that I felt solved the problem, so I voted against it at Finance Committee. But I made the motion to add that $25,000 for the school budget, and if I were on the school committee, I would try to make sure that obviously there are 5 other members, but to make sure that unified sports continued to get its support at the school committee in the school budget. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know if I got out of my order here. I started with Laurie, right? On this question?
Yeah.
Article 14? Okay. So back to Erin. So, okay, I'll go a little lighter. What is one thing that you think every student should leave Reading Public Schools learning how to do besides the basics like reading, writing, and math?
That's a great question. I have a hard time saying like one singular thing, but something that comes to mind is a sense of civic duty. I think that students should have a sense of their larger community. So whether it's their larger school community or their larger town community, what the needs are within that community and ways to give back and volunteer and get involved. So I think, Reading High has a tremendous array of clubs and organizations, many of which cement that idea of civic engagement. But I almost think there should be a requirement. I know that a lot of students get into volunteering as part of National Honor Society, but some students opt not to do that, or some students don't qualify for one reason or another for National Honor Society. But I think the volunteer portion, again, that there's so much to be gained from giving back. Obviously, I'm someone who's incredibly involved, gives a lot of my time. I'm trying to instill that in my children. Sometimes easier said than done, but I think it's an important part of being an adult in society is giving back to your community. So I think that's something I would like to see students graduate from Reading High with.
Oh, what about you, Jeff?
Sure. I kind of stole my answer. I would have maybe said vote would be my, but just to be involved in the elections and the town, understand what goes into the town budget, what goes into giving them the education that they got, to understand the pieces of the finance that we're asking all of the voters to support possibly an override, to understand what goes into receiving the education that they received in the Reading Public Schools.
Okay, and what about you, Laurie?
This is an easy one for me. So leadership, because leadership is a key feature in our mission at Reading Public Schools. Mission, vision, equity statement, and portrait of a graduate. And yet we don't teach leadership. So I think we need to be more deliberate about that. Going back to honor society, where you have to have two forms of leadership, a lot of kids doubt their leadership abilities because they're not the captain of the football team or they're not a class officer. But what children don't know or realize, because they're not taught this from an early age, there's so many different definitions of being a leader, ways to be a leader, personal responsibility, just doing something small. Being kind is being a leader. So if we're able to do this with our children in the Reading Public Schools from an early age, just help them understand what they're doing is being a leader, then we'll have leaders, whether they're captain of the football team or not. And we will fulfill our mission, our vision, our equity statement, and our portrait of a graduate. And in that case, all those kids who now feel as though they're leaders, they will bring that and be leaders both in our community, in their families, in our world. And that's something that I think is a definite that those kids need to learn in Reading Public Schools.
Okay, thank you. And so we think we have time for two more questions?
We're gonna go plus 3 minutes, so yeah, I think we do.
Okay. So I was going to save this for my last question, but I really want to know the answer. So depending on how we go. So we are going to be hiring a new superintendent. We don't know who that will be. But if you were a school committee member, what would be your top 1 to 3 goals for their new superintendent? And we'll start with Geoff.
Right. So the new superintendent needs to come in and really communicate with the community. That person needs to really, we'll eventually, maybe next year, maybe a couple years from now, need to make the case to the community of why this operational override is essential to maintaining the education that we're able to give to our children. So the ability to go in to listen to all the stakeholders and to make the case, to communicate them, to understand where the improvements need to be made and why we need to do it with maybe some budget support. And to understand all of the, so the second item would be to understand all of the unique strengths and challenges at the different schools, to understand what it is about each school's character that makes it unique, that makes it special for the students that go there.
Okay, and Laurie?
Okay, so one of the biggest challenges I think for a new superintendent will be to help maintain the great community relationships that we have right now. And in order to do that, I think they need to be able to come in and observe, get to know everyone, all the staff, the students, the families, obviously the school committee. Observe, take the time to observe and get to know what's going on, and do homework. I think would be helpful too, to know what they're walking into. Hopefully they've done that. Because I think one of our biggest strength and that we value as a community is how we treat each other, and that the things that are most important to us are the children, their safety, and their success. So having a foundation for that, and if they can understand the culture, that's great. And then within that first year, they should be looking at what their goals are. How do they build upon the progress that we've already made in the current strategic plan? Some people like to come in and change things and just kind of for the sake of changing, and I don't know that that's appropriate here, because we're on a really good trajectory towards our goals. So if that person can take the time to understand what the true needs are rather than what they want to see, I think that's a big one. And then the third is clearly the budget, making sure they understand the situation, the people, the priorities going into a potential override.
Okay, thank you. And Erin?
So I don't know that I necessarily have something new to add here. I would agree with a lot of what has already been said. I think the biggest thing is going to be connecting to the various stakeholder groups, and that will come from time spent, time listening, time observing, presence in the schools, in the town, at events. But I'm talking about central office, school committee, principals and district leadership, staff, um, and there's different elements to our staff groups, right? So, not just teachers, but also our para educators, also our health staff, also our custodians, and our cafeteria staff. I think spending time getting to know student cohorts, listening to parent groups, community groups, getting to know the key people at town hall. So all of that takes a lot of time, takes a genuine willingness to listen and learn initially. I think another thing will be sort of assessing what are the strengths of all of our schools and all of these groups, but also starting to get a sense of what might be the areas of need. So we're coming up on completing our strategic plan. I don't think it's a time for big changes. I think it's a time for status quo and to stay on track. But we still always need to be, sort of looking ahead and what's coming up. And then I would also agree that the budget, really understanding the budget quickly is going to be important, because negotiations are coming up next year. We're looking at a potential override at some point in the near future. So they're going to have a lot to learn very quickly, but I think they will have a lot of support too.
Okay, thank you. So I think this is the last question, and I kind of just wrote it on the fly, so hopefully I'll read it correctly. And hopefully this will be the one that gets different answers from everybody. So imagine you've been elected and you're at your first school committee meeting. What is your passion? What do you want to specialize on as a school committee member? I've seen different members focus on literacy, policy, the CPAC, being a liaison with other boards. We had someone that wanted to be on the Killam committee, though that is going to work itself out because that will be built. So what would be your passion as a school committee member? And we'll start with Laurie.
Well, my first is leadership, but we already talked about that, so I'm not going to go into that anymore. Clearly, I'm very interested in literacy and making sure that we follow through on where we started in 2022 with ARC Core, bringing that on board for K through 3. I know we've made progress clearly with that. We're in the 90th percentile in achievement, so that's great for literacy. The expansion into, I'm not sure exactly what the next steps are going into high school, but I think particularly for kids who may have kind of been left behind, and some of my kids are in that position too, to bring some of that also into the high school. So I don't know what that looks like. I'm eager to learn. So that would be one place I'd like to jump in. But also just making sure we're building on what we've already created and following up with metrics. I mean, we need to see longevity of what our investment is, right? Like, is it really working? Is it working for all students? Are there other things that we need to do to support what we've already started? It's there's a lot to do, and for each student, it's different, right? So we say every child, we're meeting every child where they are. That is different for a lot of different kids. There are the special ed kids, as far as reading, they may have, they're about 35% of those kids need extra help. 40%, as I was talking about before, 40% are not easy learners to read. That's a huge number of students. And so I'd like to just clarify, are we meeting the needs of those students particularly? Because we have a big budget for special ed, we need to pay attention to that middle 40%.
Thank you. And Erin?
So this is a little bit hard to pin down for me because I've already been serving for 6 years. So 6 years ago, there were things I really wanted to see happen that we have made happen. So we now have universal full day kindergarten for everyone.
You need a
You
new
know,
passion.
need a new passion. I think for me, I'll just say that the reason I chose to run again is because of the success that we've had, and I don't want to see that derailed. I would like to see us stay on track. So I'm passionate about supporting the transition of our next leader and making sure it's as smooth as possible for the district. I'm passionate about continuing to have a collaborative and respectful and student focused school committee that is doing the work that needs to get done for our schools and to support our staff and administrators. I am thrilled with the changes that have been happening at Reading Memorial High School in the expanded innovation pathways and class offerings and the math pathways. Like I want to make sure that we're staying on track with all of that. And I'm worried about the budget. So I'm very protective of what we've put in place and all that we've accomplished. Again, I don't want to see it derailed. I don't want to see us go backwards because of a budget. I want to see us continue to move forward because the momentum we have made is incredible. The place where our schools are now, I'm not even sure we could have imagined 6 years ago. So it's not one thing, but I'm passionate about keeping the train on the rails.
Thank you. And last, Geoff.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been on finance committee for 6 years, or sorry, 4 years, and been involved in the PTO budgets for 12 years. So I think certainly I'm going to get in the rut of being on the budget, probably the FinCom liaison here. But I hope to expand a little bit beyond that. And I echo some of what Erin just said about the innovation pathways, the expanded AP offerings at the high school. I do worry a little bit, and I want to focus some on that students might get a little sort of locked into something too early in their careers. I mean, even we talked about the math pathways, but to a large extent, some of that is set in sixth grade when they take at the end of the year a test that sets where they're going to be for seventh grade math, and that sort of sets a trajectory that's quite hard to get off of. So, as a engineering STEM career, someone who has an engineering background, that math is so important, and to help those students recognize where they need to be in sixth grade is something that I hope I would be able to pay attention to. The innovation pathways, by continuing also some of these, people talk a lot about project-based learning, which I think we see a lot in, for example, the drama club, where you get a bunch of people together that say, we want to do this, here's our time lane, we have to have the thing ready for the dress rehearsal on this date, we need to get these things done. So it's a lot of collaboration, it's a lot of leadership of the students deciding who's going to do what at their time. So I need to check in with the superintendent to make sure that as a school committee member I would still be able to volunteer for the drama club in that capacity. So yeah, I'm excited about the possibility of working more directly to benefit the students of the town. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Well, this has been great. I hope I didn't stress you out too much with the questions. And so now it is time for our closing statements. And since we're going to go in reverse order, we'll be starting with Lori.
Okay. Thank you, Reading Recap. Thank you, everyone here in the room and everyone who's online watching. One thing you may learn about me is that I am a thinker. I think while I'm mucking stalls at my volunteer job on Wednesdays, but I think, and I'm thinking for Reading Public Schools. I'm looking for ways to address challenges, and preparing for these the forums. I noticed that the strategic plan is an 83-page table. It's kind of unwieldy, and one of our strategic goals is literally to communicate with families, and one of them would be about the status perhaps of the strategic plan. So my recommendation would be to develop a dashboard of the strategic plan that could be easily shared and communicate the progress that we're making on the strategic plan. And perhaps we could use AI, since it's a big document and they could just still use it if they wanted, use AI and have students do that as a project perhaps to build the dashboard. So that's just one idea. Another is, I've mentioned this the other day, perhaps supporting the development of a nonprofit organization that would be an endowment perhaps, that we could have donations from various people. And for instance, Claudia Milks and Fanaris donated nearly $600,000 for renovation of some of the athletic facilities. And if we had that kind of generous donation for an endowment, we could actually fund some of our innovative activities for years to come. I'm going to stop there because I know I'm almost done, but I just wanted to thank everyone and vote on April 7th. I'm running for school committee. If you want more information, please look at my website, hayes4sc.com. Thank you.
Okay, and now it's going reverse. So Geoff, you're in the middle again.
Wait for the camera to line up. As a school committee member, I would welcome the new superintendent and help that person understand the special strengths and challenges of each schools. I would help guide the budget to make effective and efficient use of the towns allocated by the town meeting members. I would support thoughtful discussions and policies on the proper use of and restrictions on artificial intelligence and cell phones. I would maintain the focus on closing the achievement gaps between subgroups of students. But more importantly, I would work to expand opportunities for various avenues of success and to ensure all children feel welcome in and supported by the Reading Public Schools. Most of my favorite memories of Reading are tied to its public schools, from volunteering in my daughter's elementary school classrooms to proudly watching their graduations in 2019 and 2021. I hope you will give me the opportunity to continue to support the Reading Public Schools and the children of our town as a member of the school committee. Thank you to the organizers of tonight's forum. Thank you to the other candidates for their thoughtful answers. And thank you to the audience members, both here and online, for taking the time to listen to this forum. Please be sure to vote starting tomorrow, early voting, but at least by April 7th. Thank you.
Okay, and Erin.
Thank you again to Chris and Marcel and Marianne for organizing and taking your time on a Friday night to help make sure we have an informed electorate in town. So I do hope people will take the time to learn about the election, learn about the candidates, and make a good decision, whether it's next week early voting or on April 7th. Serving on the school committee has reinforced something I think I've always known, which is that Reading values strong schools and thoughtful leadership. This requires more than just showing up. It requires listening carefully, weighing diverse perspectives, and making the difficult decisions that balance the needs of our students, our educators, and our taxpayers. I take that responsibility very seriously. As we look ahead, our district is entering a pivotal chapter. We're preparing to welcome a new superintendent, hot topic right now, and navigate significant financial challenges. In moments like these, steady leadership is essential. My 6 years of experience have prepared me for this. I helped lead the transition for our current superintendent, and I worked to build community support for the 2018 operational override. I know how to guide these conversations with transparency, fiscal responsibility, and care. I remain deeply optimistic about the future of Reading Public Schools. I ask for your vote so that I can continue our work, keeping students at the center of every decision that we make. Thank you.
Okay, so our candidates have all pretty much covered a lot with the election, but I just want to remind people that if you go to readingma.gov and under departments, if you click elections, all the information about early voting, which starts tomorrow, is there, along with the hours all week that you can actually still register to vote, and you can get this information on late ballot. So please take a look at that and find out the best time that is going to work for you to vote. I want to thank all of the candidates for their participation tonight, and thanks to everyone here who made this happen, including the Reading Recap. And if you're watching this from home, whether live or at a later time, thank you for watching and staying informed. Forums like this work when candidates and community are engaged and show up and give each other respect with a commitment to discuss all of the topics that we care about. Everything that happens here will shape our future, and I'm so glad. I like I said this last night, and I meant it, and I mean it again tonight. I wish I could vote for all of you, because I really am impressed with everything I've heard. So go to all the candidates' websites to continue learning about the issues, talk with one another, and most importantly, to vote. Thank you and good night.